Good evening, everybody. Brian Neubert here from goldandblack.com, live somewhere in the Moda Center in Portland, Oregon. I really don't know where. This is the least rap video conducive facility I think I've ever done one of these things in, because there are other games going on out there. There's music playing, there's crowds. The media room where I can normally do these things in the press conference area, there's people in there all the time. I have nowhere to go. So here I am, tucked away in some sort of loading area. I have no idea. But this is your rap video following Purdue's 75-56 win over Duke to win the Phil Knight legacy. And the blowhard narcissist I am, with news like that to cover, I opened the video complaining about me not having anywhere to do this video. That kind of sums me up in a nutshell right there. Just an absolute blowhard. Thank you to Purdue Union Club Hotel for your support of these things. As always, we appreciate it profoundly. Let's get right to it. Purdue beats Gonzaga and Purdue beats Duke in the span of 72 hours to really lay claim to the college basketball world's darling status. It is shocking, to be honest with you, what you saw from Purdue. The right kind of shocking if you're a Purdue partisan, but shocking nonetheless. It is very much the nature of college basketball. When you're young in the backcourt and you have all sorts of players who might be old or experienced moving into very different roles, bearing very different levels of responsibility, there is going to be some tumult there. There is going to be some ups and downs, and Purdue is still going to have some ups and downs. November realities, remember, are fleeting. This stuff like this can be a punchline here in like 6 weeks for any team who won one of these things this weekend. But Purdue looks like they're way ahead of the curve here. They look advanced. A lot of this is their freshmen. A lot of this is their collective maturity. A lot of this is their collective attentiveness. I think a lot of it, too, is catch Duke when they're young, and this kind of stuff, can work to your advantage. But just an absolute tour de force by Purdue here this weekend, whatever that actually means. And a really pleasant surprise, and one that changes the paradigm of this season for Purdue. I love using the word paradigm. I'm pretty sure I know what it means, but I'm not entirely sure I know what it means. But I know what it means just enough to use it pretty liberally. I think this has to change the way we all kind of view Purdue's season. Now, if you were the guy who expects the Final Four and the Big Ten title every year, you're good. Stay right where you are. But if you were among those of us who are reasonable about things and understand that, hey, Purdue has one point guard and he's a freshman, or, Ross-Ade has to play, way more minutes now, and he has to make decisions offensively now, really for the first time in his career. This is the first time he's ever been the best player on his team at any level. Or, okay, Ethan Morton now is not just that Swiss Army knife off the bench. Now he's a 30-minute guy who has to prorate value over that time. Or, Trey Kaufman-Renn and Caleb Furst coming off the bench and being really, guys who Purdue's going to rely on. Or David Jenkins, having never played for Purdue before, having to come in and not just play a role but play an important role. Or Fletcher Lawyer having to start. Or Brandon Newman coming off a season where he was out of the rotation for most of the year. Legitimate questions, all of them. So if you were one of those to see things like that clearly, you could very reasonably expect, Purdue to come out of the gate here kind of tripping all over itself to a certain extent. Would have been perfectly cool, to be honest with you, if Purdue came out of this 2-1, 1-2 even, and said, all right, well, we went to that thing to get better, and now we're better. But Purdue did much, much more than that. They didn't just beat Gonzaga and Duke. They beat the hell out of Gonzaga and Duke. The percentage of those two games that they spent up double figures was probably close to 40-50%, wouldn't you think? I have no idea. But they controlled those games, and they never allowed Gonzaga or Duke to make a run. And that's the best way to weather a run from a really good team. And time will tell how good Gonzaga and Duke are. But Gonzaga and Duke are still Gonzaga and Duke. They're going to be good. Whether they're all-time good, we will wait and see. But the best way to weather a run against a great team and a great program is to never allow that run to materialize. And that is precisely what Purdue has done here the last 2 games. Gonzaga never really got a chance to make that run because Purdue kept making a play when they needed to make a play. West Virginia, the game before that, did make a run. Purdue made the plays. Braden Smith made the plays at the time to beat that back. Duke had opportunities to make runs here. I don't know, maybe they weren't mature enough to do it. Maybe Caleb First's force of nature effort just was exactly what Purdue needed to keep them at bay. I don't know, but Purdue won these games going away. Purdue closed these games like killers. They never stopped attacking. They never played the scoreboard. I have covered young teams before. The 2007 team had Missouri beat at Missouri. There was a game at Clemson I thought they had won at one point in time. They just sort of, I don't want to say they clammed up, but I think to a certain extent they sort of felt the pressure. They buckled a little bit. They started maybe playing the clock a little bit, hoped that the game would just kind of run out. This team does not do that. Braden Smith, when he's got the ball in his hands, they do not do that. Ross-Ade does not do that. That was a really impressive part of this, sort of the killer instinct that Purdue showed, and just the slamming of the door on these guys' faces, like George Jefferson to Tom Willis. For those of you who are old enough to remember the Jeffersons. Just a really impressive, really complete, really mature showing here from Purdue. And what's really kind of interesting about this is, Purdue's in the same position it was in a year ago at this time in Connecticut. They are college basketball's darling right now. The national media comes to these things, and they anoint teams, they anoint players, and then they anoint someone else the next week or another player the next week. That's kind of the nature of it. But right now, Purdue is that team. A year ago, Purdue was that team, and I sat here and I try not to beat my readers over their heads with negativity or skepticism or whatever it might be. But I remember thinking, hopefully saying that, guys, I don't know how sustainable this is. I mean, look how they just won. They're just outscoring people. They just have so much more talent than the teams they're playing. Or the way North Carolina plays is just so conducive to Purdue just scoring like crazy. It didn't look sustainable. It looked like one of those deals where that was a team that was just content to roll the ball out there and just put up 90 on everybody, and chances are that was going to be good enough to win 30 games, win a bunch of championships. As we know, that's not how things played out. That team had the big stuff. They had NBA talent. They had suffocating size. They were dominant around the rim. They had shooting. They had experience. They had everything you needed from a foundational component perspective. What they did not have was the little things, as came to bear in no uncertain terms as soon as Big Ten play started. Again, comparing last year's team to this year's team is not a fair comparison. They are fundamentally different teams, different personalities, different everything. I'm just using them as a lens to look at this year's team through, because the situations are very similar, even though the teams are very different. That team did not have the little things in place this time of year. This team wins with the little things. This team is defending people. They are playing as one defensively. They are paying attention defensively. They're detail-oriented. They're playing their asses off. Pardon my French. Sorry to offend your delicate sensibilities there with my potty mouth. But they are playing really hard. They are making a half a dozen plays every game where you're like, damn, that play just changed the game because that guy dove on a ball, or that guy tipped a ball, or Caleb First just blocked a three-pointer somehow like Zion Williamson. And it's not one guy. This isn't Mason Gillis out there last year as the one guy doing this stuff and changing a game by chasing an offensive rebound. This is Mason Gillis. This is Caleb First. This is Braden Smith. This is Ross-Ade's diving on the floor for a loose ball today. That was a huge play that I didn't even write about because there was so much else to write about. Brandon Newman's made some plays. Trey Kaufman-Wren's playing really hard on the glass. Fletcher Lawyer strips Mark Mitchell at the rim today, allowing Braden Smith to throw the ball out off Duke. It it's a team-wide deal. David Jenkins is doing some really positive things from an effort perspective, getting on the floor. This is a team-wide deal. And, bad stuff is infectious and good stuff is infectious. And the good stuff with this team seems to be infectious. And they're playing really hard. They're playing really together from a defensive perspective. They're playing really together from an offensive perspective. They're playing really together, period. They're playing in a way that completely belies their level of experience together. And their starting point to this season, their floor, is just exceedingly high because of it. What else I got here? What my point was originally there about last year in Connecticut and this year here in Portland is that the way Purdue's won this year versus the way they won last year, it looks sustainable. Last year, as I just talked about, you had to wonder if it was sustainable. This is the stuff that wins in the Big Ten. This is the stuff that gets you through 3 of 21 three-point shooting nights. This is the stuff that gets you through those games where you turn the ball over 5 more times than you should. This is the stuff that gets you through some rando on some other team making 5 threes against you and completely sucker punching you. This is what gives you margin for error. Defending, getting loose balls, rebounding, and just trying hard. This is the stuff that this team can be built around that last year's team, never really grasped. And had they grasped it, there'd be a couple of different banners hanging up in Mackey Arena right now. Again, bad comparison with last year's team. Good comparison, the circumstances from one to the next. Purdue last year got to number 1. This year's team is going to have a single-digit number next to its name come next week. Last year's team, I don't think, ever really acclimated well to that situation you're in where everybody wants to beat you as bad as they want to beat anybody on their schedule. The proverbial, we're going to get everybody's best shot, was something that was good to talk about in press conferences, but never really materialized in real life. This team, I think these guys are level-headed. I think they're wise. I think they're mature beyond their years, and I would not anticipate any sort of drastic changes in the Purdue you see moving forward to the Purdue you've seen here in Portland over the last week. I'm not saying Purdue's going to win every game they play this season. I'm not saying Purdue's not going to run into ups and downs. They're absolutely positively going to. Purdue is going to lose games this season. I can virtually promise you that. But I don't think they're going to. I don't think they're wired in a way that they will lose games because they're not ready to play, because they're kind of full of themselves. This is the classic moment where a team can get full of itself, because I haven't looked at Twitter, nor do I have any intention to do so anytime soon, but I'd imagine there are quite a few glowing tweets out there from drive-bys out there anointing Purdue as the next this or that, who will probably be anointing someone else as the next this or that next week. Purdue just needs to, live up to the cliches and just not pay any attention to it, keep doing what they're doing. You've got a level head about you. You've got guys who aren't particularly excitable. You've got 2 freshman guards who do not act like freshmen in any way, shape, or form, who are almost obnoxiously confident. I keep wanting to use the word arrogant, but I don't want that to come off badly. Braden Smith and Fletcher Lawyer have this confidence about them that borders on the right kind of arrogance. It's the sort of arrogance that Duke has always had, that has made them great. That sort of, we're better than you, and we're going to prove it by playing as hard as we possibly can right now and playing as sharp as we possibly can right now. And I think Smith and Lawyer are just an enormous part of this team's collective mentality. I think the swagger they brought in has been infectious. And I think that, Zach-Edey being everything you've needed Zach-Edey to be here in every way, shape, or form, coupled with how well Ethan Morton's handled his role, coupled with how well these 4s have all stepped into their roles, coupled with Brian Waddell giving you good minutes, coupled with Brandon Newman making big shots here and there. This has been the best-case scenario. This has been, if you'd laid out a best-case scenario for Portland before this, I'm not sure this didn't exceed what you would have put down on a piece of paper, a cocktail napkin, the Notes app on your phone, wherever you like to jot things down. whatever you would have put there, this probably exceeded it. And just can't say enough about Purdue's effort this week, how advanced Purdue looks, and how high Purdue's starting point to this season is. So that's what I've got from somewhere in the Moda Center here. I think this is where they keep the WMDs. But thanks everybody for watching. Thank you for listening. Thank you for reading. And thank you for processing our materials, however it is you process our materials. And I will talk to you guys again in like 36 hours from Florida State. Incredibly that they allowed that to happen, the schedule makers. But thank you to the Purdue Club Hotel for your support. As always, we appreciate it profoundly. And I will talk to you guys again from Florida.